Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Pugh, and today we have Nina Voss on the show. She is the author of a book called Neon Noir, which will, by the time you're watching this, will have come out. And so, welcome to Writing Quest. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to babble at you.
Yeah, for sure. So, why don't you tell us how you got started? How did you get on this writing journey? Did you love it before, or kind of a new thing? How did you get here?
So I think like a lot of writers, I started when I was very young, little kid, daydreaming in school, paying attention, writing in their notebook. Some kids were doodlers. I was definitely a writer. Love to imagine worlds and start world building in my notebook and just building out these little plot lines, little beginnings of stories. Never ever finished the story when I was a kid,
Of course.
And so it got to the point where in class I would get excited for certain classes because I knew that, especially math, I knew that I was going to turn my brain off, not pay attention, and that was story building time. And I would just sit in the back, not pay attention, and work through my plot lines, work through my characters. So I always loved it. And ever since I was a kid, I had the dream of I want to be I want to write a book someday. And when you're a kid, it can mean a lot of things. It could mean a, physical book like this. It could mean you have a story completed. It could mean you're a published author. But I knew as a kid that I wanted that. And then in high school, embarrassing to say, but I own it now. I started writing fan fiction. And the reason why I wrote fan fiction was because there were these sites. It's embarrassing what I wrote fan fiction about. But what I would do is I would take stories that I had already written or had ideas for, and I would just change the character name to a famous person. That way, had an audience that was just like there as rabid fans of this person and they're excited to read. But really, I had a separate story that I wanted them to read anyway. So that was like my outlet through high school. And I wrote a lot of fan fiction. And then college came and died out. And after college, I had the more refined skill set. And I was like, well, I do want to do this, and it's just a matter of finding the time and the energy. So I wrote a manuscript that I didn't feel super confident in it, but that was like, I can actually write something from the beginning to the end. And so after I wrote that manuscript, I was like, I'm going to write something that I have my heart into. And that was Neon Noir. So yeah,
Nice.
that's how I got there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I might be the only writer ever who actually caught the bug later in life. So in school, I wanted nothing to do with writing. So I was a musician, like I did band and choir and all that stuff. I did theater stuff. But I wanted nothing to do with writing, and I wanted nothing to do with like my mom always wanted to push me towards doing like video. Like we had our high school TV film group or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those things I do now, and I wanted nothing to do with them when I was a kid. Yeah. So, there's maybe a cautionary tale about sometimes your parents know maybe what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Yeah, that's really cool. And I love I love the fan fiction stuff. I think it's actually really smart because if you already know the subject matter, especially, it's a way for you to practice without having to do a lot of the nitty gritty of creation. You can just practice the writing part.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
I think it's really smart.
Thank you. That's not often used to describe somebody writing fan fiction. So I appreciate that.
I've done the occasional writing exercise where, for example, when the Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out, the Star Wars show, I was a little disappointed in some of the story elements to that. And so there were parts that I liked, and then there were parts I was like, that was kind of weird. I don't know why we did that. So I just as an exercise, wrote a couple of scenes that this is how I would have done that differently, just as an exercise. So I think it's useful.
Yeah, and it's fun, right?
Yeah. So your book, Neon Noir, obviously cyberpunk, you are a big fan of that. I read that when I was reading through your bio stuff. So Why do you love cyberpunk so much, and why did that kind of catch your interest?
Yeah, so I obviously William Gibson, he was very, just his writing style was very captivating for me. And I loved that when you read it, you just immediately see the world. And it's the way he writes it is almost a little confusing. The first book I read by him wasn't Neuromancer, but it was it's terrible. I'm forgetting the name. But when I first started reading it, I was like, I have no idea what's going on, because I just, I'm picking it up, and it was a lot of fragments and neon. I'm doing a terrible job describing it, but just the way that I saw the world, it was very captivating and very different than other sci-fi worlds that I'm very used to. And I've read a lot of space operas and things like that. This was very different. And I've always loved Blade Runner, and I love synthwave music. And I think that was the biggest inspiration for me, was the art and music side. So synthwave and cyberpunk and vaporwave, all of that with the neon colors and the grunge and the random, things like, let's see, artwork like that. I'm a writer, and I am not using words very well at all to describe this entire aesthetic.
It's all right.
Which is kind of interesting, given that, I wrote a whole book on it. I swear I describe it better in there. But for this book in particular, so it was always a world vibe aesthetic that I loved. And I was on a road trip, or I was in the car traveling for many, many hours, and I'm just listening to some cyberpunk mix. I don't remember. And then it's just, I'm seeing the characters, and I start to build up this little plot line. And then for that 6-hour car ride, I had a pretty rough plot line made, and I was like, hell yeah, I know this world. I love this world. I should write in this world. And music is a huge inspiration for me. And I find that it's difficult for me to write without music. And if I ever am in a writer's slump, I can just listen to either listen to a synthwave mix or listen to Gunship, and it's like, boom, immediate inspiration, and then I'm back at it. So that was where I got the idea for this book in particular.
Yeah. So it sounds like music plays a pretty big role for you. Do you have kind of a process around that? Like, do you listen to like the same like mix for when you're writing the same like a story, or do you vary it a lot, or how's that?
For the mixes, I like to do random mixes, but definitely like Gunship in particular, there are a few songs that just encapsulate different parts of my book, and I've definitely gotten a lot of direct inspiration for plot lines for my book. And so listening to those songs in particular, I can just listen to it, and then it's like, okay, how am I going to further the plot? And I just get emotions from it, and it's very easy to feed off of it. So it's a little bit of a combination of both.
Yeah. When I first started writing, I didn't really ever write to music. And then which is funny because I'm a musician, but I came across, because I do like listening to cinematic things like Two Steps from Hell and that kind of stuff, which kind of like the movie score type music. Okay. I came across just randomly this artist called Joe Blankenberg, and he writes just like cinematic albums. So it's like strings, and he's done a whole bunch of genres like westerns and space operas and fantasy and like. But I came across this album called Elysium from 2012. Like, it's been a while, and like the moment I heard it, I was like, this is the sound of my story. Like, I just instantly, like, I wasn't even thinking about my story, but then I heard it, and I was like, it took me right there, and it was like I could see it like a movie. Like, I could just I can see exactly how this should happen. And so I've even gone a little bit further now of like, when I'm writing my current book, I only listen to that album. So it's kind of like a Pavlov dog thing of like, when I hear that, I can jump in.
Yeah. I think it's the exact same way with Gunship because it was very much like a movie scene was playing, and I love Gunship and I'll listen to them elsewhere, but it's gotten to the point now where when I'm listening to it, I feel like I need to go sit down and write because I'll get these ideas and stuff, and it's like, no, I'm just trying to walk the dog. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I can't. I try to now only listen to it when I'm like, I could go right if I need to, because something will inevitably come to me.
Something's going to come from it. Yeah.
What's your writing process like outside of music? So, do you like to outline more? Do you like to just write it, discovery write it? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, I am such a type A person. I'm such a planner, and I have calendars and I food plan, meal prep, all of that. But with writing, I, for whatever reason, can't outline very well. I always do a rough out or attempt to do a rough outline of, the bare bones plot. But even then I'll get stuck with it. And then I'm like, well, I just really want to start writing. And then my first manuscript was a mystery thriller. And when I started writing, I didn't know how the mystery was going to be solved, which is like the biggest faux pas. You got to know how the mystery is solved before you start. And I didn't even quite know that because I was just so itching to write. And I feel like I can't get there thinking about it ahead of time. I just need to see where the story takes it. So like I'm partway through the draft for the second book because this is a series. I've stuck myself into a series. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
And I wrote a very rough outline, but even then the ending is like a big question mark. And I'm just like, we're going to figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
So
do you like, see if I can formulate this question correctly. So do you like to follow kind of more of the character arcs? Do you stick, like, what is the main driver when you're discovery writing your story? So like I'm a big world building person. So I would do the world building, and now it's taken me a long time to find the story, but like the story is kind of wrapped around how the world works. Like, does that kind of make sense?
Yes. I think it's character driven, and I think that's why my first book is so dang long. It's a thick boy. Because I did have a plot line. Once I was, partway through the book, it was like, okay, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. But I'm very into the characters, very character driven, very character oriented. That's the main for me when I read or when I do anything, play video games, anything involving characters or story. For me, it's all about the characters first and foremost. So if I don't like them or if I'm not pulled into them, then I don't care about anything else. So I think it's the characters that are the main forefront, the main leading force. And yeah, that's why I thick.
Yeah. Well, I like big books. So I'm a big fan of big books and long series. So I'm like,
me too. And I don't understand this aversion now. And it's, this book is too big, or I need to make it short and sweet, or the bigger, the better. It means there's more to read.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think you definitely should, obviously, like, you need to write your story for your story. You know what I mean? So like, if your story is a short story or a shorter book, then it is, that's just how it goes. But don't like artificially limit it either. I think that there's a lot of that where people are like,
yes,
well, it needs to fit. I want it to be like this. I'm like, well, no, let your story be your story,
Right.
Yeah. I like the Brandon Sanderson. Part of the reason I love world building stuff is I'm a big fan of Brandon Sanderson. And he's really great about his world as a character. Like the characters are reacting to the world, and then the world is reacting back to them. So it's like this, it actually like informs the story. And so I really like when it's kind of both things.
I wonder if I'd like to say that I do that the world itself is a character. Have you read his or watched his lectures that he has on YouTube?
Oh yeah. I haven't watched them recently. I probably should, but that's always the first thing I point people to. Like if anyone's like, I don't know, how do I get started? I'm like, go to these.
They're
Watch these
so
lectures.
great.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a writer and you just enjoy reading, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and even I would say, like, even if you aren't a fan of his writing, like the
Mm,
knowledge is still good, you know?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned this is going to be a series. Do you know how long it is yet? Or are you just kind of like, it's at least 2 books?
I think it's going to be 3 books, and I'm planning on the second book being a bit shorter just so that I can have it out and that the third book can be a kind of meaty resolution. But it's probably going to be 3. But the nice thing is that having this whole world built, you can always write a prequel at one point or follow this side character if you want to at some point. But like many writers, you have a million works in progresses and different ideas, and I have 2 other manuscripts that I'd really like to work on, but I'm not going to do it until I'm done with this one. So I don't think I can do much longer than 3 books.
Yeah. That's some pretty solid discipline. Like I commend you for, you know, being, because I'm way more like just go with wherever my creativity is that day. So
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes that's it to my detriment because I should be working on this thing that's close, but I'm not, and I'm over here messing with this one, you know.
Right. I
So
do understand that though.
yeah. Do you have any more ideas for stories in this world, or is just kind of that trilogy right now?
Just the trilogy right now. I've written a couple very it's almost pathetic to say that I have a couple because it's really like few, and I've uploaded them onto Medium, and I wrote like very short little 2-pager side stories that are just happening in the world of Cyber City, which is the colloquial name for the world that this book takes place. And I did have this idea that while I was marketing this book, I would have like a plethora of stories all taking place in this world, and you can read them on my Medium before the book comes out, but there's only like 3. So just because that was like too much energy taken away from this actual product, so didn't divert a lot of time into that. But there's a couple little stories out there.
Yeah. I've the same. I have a few little like just random short stories. Like whenever I've wanted to had an idea for a scene that didn't fit, or had an idea for like I wanted to explore something about a character or something. So I've often thought maybe what I'll do is after I get some of the books published, then I'll just do like a collected, edited work of like here's the 10 short stories I randomly wrote while doing this.
That's a solid idea.
Um, what are some of your biggest challenges with the writing process? So, like with the writing process itself, writing, just the whole self-published author thing.
That's a good question because there's just so many.
So many challenges.
So many challenges. Oh, I mean, the biggest one for me is my toddler because I have a son. And, I find that I have more time than when I was working my full-time job, but it's very draining and your time is split more. So, I have more time, but it's like I have 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 20 minutes here. And I'm someone who, if I'm working, I need to sit down for a couple hours and really get into it. And, you want to make time for family time and things like that. And I have found that being with a toddler all day, even a baby when he was younger, it just kind of rots your brain. And you really, like, how do I talk? What are adult themes? What is characterization? We've been singing Baby Shark all day. Like it's
Right.
So
It's like switching back into adult mode.
yes, exactly. So I find that difficult, especially when it's like, okay, he's playing with this over here. I'm going to sit down and write for a little bit. It's like my brain isn't there. And for me, I think for most people, you got to have the creative juices flowing if you really want to have good output. So the juices just aren't flowing when the toddler's around.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, and that's, I've kind of switched more to like a time based. So instead of telling myself I'm going to write 1,000 words today, I look at, the schedule or the calendar and I'm like, I've got a half hour at round lunch where I can write. And so I just make the goal about like sitting for that half hour. Now, whether I write 20 words or 1,000 words or 5 words, doesn't matter. We accomplish the goal because again, like you said, like you can't account for when you're feeling creative. You can't really account for when maybe you had a bad day that morning, or you have there's all those variables you can't account for. So it's kind of a way to like, I feel like I'm still writing more over time, even though I'm not like getting 1,000 words every day or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. For the first manuscript, a couple of years ago that I wrote, the mystery thriller that maybe will see the light of day someday. We'll see. That I was like 1,000 words every day. And if I miss 1,000 words the next day, then 2 days later, I'm doing 2,000 words type of deal. And it did, like, I stuck with it pretty well, but it definitely wasn't my most optimum. Like there were some days where I'm struggling to push the words out and they're not the best. But now that's not feasible. And I do the same thing, time, because I can't put that pressure on myself. I don't even know how many words I've written. People will post online all the time, like 1,500 words today, or got another 33, I don't know, random numbers. And I'm like, I don't know how much I wrote.
Not even going to count it.
Not going to count it. Yeah.
For sure. So you're self-publishing this book, or have self-published this book. So why maybe did you choose that? Did you pursue any of the traditional publishing route? And then what has that whole process been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, man, what a world self-publishing is, right? Like with my first manuscript that, again, years ago, the mystery thriller, that didn't even know about self-publishing. And it was very much, I'm going to get this traditionally published. And I did all the research and knew everything you needed to know about agents and queries and all of that. And I started to go through that process. I think I sent out like 3 queries and I was like, this is exhausting. And I don't think this work is polished enough for me to sell it. And then I had the idea for Neon Noir and I was like, I'm going to write that instead, because this
just not deflect. We'll just go this way.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And there are some things you learn about going trad they're like do's and don'ts, right? And one of them is don't end your book on a cliffhanger. You need to have a standalone, everything is polished, which makes sense because a traditional publisher doesn't want to sign someone on and then the book doesn't do well and then they have this unfinished series. They don't want to deal with that. They want a standalone. I could not make this book a standalone. The main little plot line is resolved, but then the overarching plot is not, and it leads directly into the second book. And I did that on purpose because I like books like that and because I wanted it to lead perfectly into the second book. I wanted you to be like, I need to know what happens next, And it's a bit of a niche. Like cyberpunk it's not huge in what's being marketed right now. So I knew that my chances getting this traditionally published already were very, very, very slim. And the more I wrote it, the more I was like, I don't know if I can get this traditionally published. And so then I started to look into self-publishing. And my previous conception was that, it's kind of like you do it if you fail at a traditional publishing, or that it's kind of a whatever route to go, like self-published. Just the more I looked into it, the more I was completely proven wrong. And I actually got really excited about it. I was like, man, I full creative control. I can be there through every single step, and it's free. I mean, obviously, like most people who, like, I put money into the cover art, I put money into different things, but you in theory can do it for free. And like, that's amazing. So, and the other big thing was the timeline. In theory, if you go the trad route, you can be sending out queries for months and months and months. And then you finally maybe get an agent. And then it's months and months and months and months. And then maybe finally you'll get a publisher. And then maybe it's years before your book actually gets to a shelf. And I was like, I want my book out by the next year. I want to have that book out.
And that's even after potential years that it took you to draft it, write it, edit it.
Right. Like, that didn't even account all that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it could be like 5 years from now and I finally have that book out. And it was like, that's just not, I wanted the book out soon. You know, I have a million book ideas. It would be great to then be able to throw out more because I'll have known all of the ins and outs of indie publishing. So for me, the more I learn about indie, the more excited I got. And then I didn't even bother trying to go the trad route with this. So,
yeah. I'm kind of a old punk rock kid. So I grew up on like Blink-182 and all that kind of stuff. So my thing with self-publishing I just don't think I can follow the rules. Like, I'm just like
yes.
I just like, I don't want to do the thing where someone else controls it and I'm not in control of the destiny of it, you know? So that's always been my thing.
Yeah, because that's a huge part is like, even if you get this agent, they're like, I love your story, but what do they call that? A revise and rewrite. And like, they're going to tell you different parts that they want you to change. And obviously there's a little piece of that when you have beta readers and editors, but it's not to the extent of an agent or an editor who's working for a publisher, because they're specifically like, what is going to sell best? And I've heard so many stories of entire characters written out or endings changed. And I'm just like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so like my wife owns a dance studio. And so when we do like competitions and stuff, what she tells the girls is that, yes, you're being judged on some technical things and there's all of that, but it's a creative field. So there's a lot of just like, do they like that style of dance? Do they like, there's all that personal preference. And I think in any creative field, like writing's that way, like you get it to your agent loves it. Well, a publisher may not because they don't, not because it's bad, but maybe the person that the agent sent it to just didn't like it because it's not their thing. So it's like, have to listen in the sense that obviously you can't be delusional about your story. Like you have to make sure it is actually good, but you could just give it to someone that it is good, but they just don't like it, you know?
Right.
So that's kind of a tough thing to quantify, I think.
For sure.
So kind of along the same lines as this. So how do you handle doing like reviews? And if you do get like a bad review or someone doesn't like it, or how do you handle some of that criticism? So that's always a tough question.
I haven't, I'm lucky enough that I haven't gotten one yet, but that's because, only reviews I've gotten are ARC reviews. And I'm lucky enough that they've all been very positive, except the first one I got was 4 stars. And the 2 semi-criticisms, one was totally valid, but I did do it on purpose, was that it does end in a, spoiler alert, it does end in a cliffhanger. Well, kind of. I have the epilogue there, and the epilogue is then a massive, oh shit. And again, I do that on purpose, and it's because some of my favorite books and book endings end in an oh shit moment. Like, I just love that. So I'm so sorry. What was the question? I just like went on a
just like criticism and getting
criticism.
Negative. Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a criticism I got, or it wasn't even phrased necessarily as a criticism, but I was like, that's valid. And then another complaint was that there wasn't a lot of like cyberpunk jargon, and that my book is very it's very realistically written, like all of the terms and things are for present day. But I actually did that very strongly on purpose because it's meant to be kind of post-apocalyptic world that very well could happen in 50 plus years. So I wrote it in mind with, if these climate disasters continued in this way, and if our AI continued in this way, and then this could happen, and then we're stuck with this world. So that was valid, that, you know, if you're really into cyberpunk, there is a lot of that kind of kitschy. I think it's a little cheesy personally, even though I do love cyberpunks. I think some of it's a little cheesy, but I don't have that in my book. It's written to the modern day. So
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten any actual negative feedback. I don't know how I'm going to take it. I'm as delicate as a flower, let me tell you.
Well, I just always, I've been talking to quite a few people about the criticism part. And my thing is like, as long as it's constructive, I'll probably be fine. Like, because obviously not everyone's going to like it. The ones that you just have to forget about, and I get this a lot on YouTube, but you just have to like, if the ones that just say something mean because they just do. Like, I had a comment recently on a video, they were like, you move your hands too much. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Like, you know, so it's that, like, as long as it's constructive, I'm all about it, you know?
Gosh, they're probably going to be like, she rocks her chair too much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just have to just ignore it. I'm like, whatever. It's like, you're not adding anything to this. So I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I think when there's and if it's, I'm all about compliment sandwiches. You know, if you start off with the positive and then give me a criticism and then end with a positive, I will handle anything. And that was the best when I had some beta readers who were very good about, you know, giving positive. And then even when there was negatives, it was often framed as kind of like a question in a way, like, are they supposed to be doing this? Because yada, yada, yada. And it's like, no, they're not. They keep pointing out things like that. So I definitely did get my taste of it with beta readers, but even then I was able to take it, but I did have to override my first instinct of being defensive. Just that natural, like, well, no, it's
yeah.
So
when I've occasionally done like book reviews on the YouTube channel, and I don't do them as much anymore because I'm a pretty slow reader. So like, it's just not as conducive for me anyways. But one of the things I do with my reviews is I try to keep it where I do like 5 good things and 5 things I didn't like. Because and those things I didn't like might be small things, but so even if you read a bad book or a bad movie or whatever, there's still good, like there's still some good things about it. Nothing is ever like completely all bad. There's still something good there. And then same thing with like even the classics, like, you know, Lord of the Rings and the things like Harry Potter that are generally regarded as just like everybody loves it. Well, they're still not perfect. So there's some things that you can say, well, I didn't really like this part, you know? But I also tried to do that too, kind of like what you're saying, like the compliment sandwich of like, I don't want to ever just like trash a book. Like, that's just not my personality. So I want to find something that's good about it, and vice versa. With one that I really like, I still want to find something like, well, this could have been a little better. So so this kind of goes with the ARC reader thing. How did you go about finding ARC readers? Like, what was your process for doing that?
Yeah, that was a scary process, just because like when I finally posted that ARC sign up, because that's where I posted a Google Sheet sign up and fill out your information, and that was terrifying because I was like, nobody's going to sign up. But since January, and that was when I was kind of leaning towards the indie route, I thought, well, I should start making a social media presence, you know, love it or hate it. Definitely lean on the side of hate most of the time. But I was like, I'm going to do this. And I did my research kind of on what platforms might be best, but I knew I didn't want to make a bunch of short videos. Like, I didn't want to do TikToks just because I I don't have that or the creative output for that specifically. So I don't even remember how I stumbled on Threads. I think I was going to use Instagram, and then that Instagram was kind of pushing Threads on me.
Mhm.
And I never liked Twitter. So I joined Threads and recommend Threads to anybody who's starting out with writing, any indie published or indie writer, any creative really. Just because it's very reminiscent of older social media because there's no ads yet. It's there's no videos, which is great. And you can actually get followers. The amount of organic followers I would get by just posting the things I was interested in. And, I first started and they call them like algorithm posts. And people would say, hey, I'm this person I'm interested in. And then you do like bullet, 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 bullet. And you just say all these things you're interested in. And then those words act as keywords. And then when people would look up that keyword, or if the almighty Meta knows that you're interested in that, it'll show up in your feed. And I found myself, meeting a lot of, hey, I write too. I write cyberpunk too. I have this cyberpunk novel out. Oh, I'm super into sci-fi. I love Blade Runner, whatever. All of it. And so I found it really easy to make a lot of genuine connections. And there was an indie writer community already on there. So I just cultivated that. And for months, I made sure that I was commenting on their things. If they had a book that looked really good, I would buy that book. Or if you have Kindle Unlimited, chances are they're on there, and then you can read it there. So I just really worked at building those connections, building a small little community. And then when it was time to post the ARC sign up, it was like, okay, we're going to find out if any of this has actually come to fruition. It did. People were actually signing up, and I was amazed. And I had a goal for my sign up, and I met that goal. I did not meet my fairy tale goal, unfortunately, where amazing. If this many signed up, that didn't. But my realistic goal I made. And now I'm in the process of watching the reviews slowly come in. And that's been a whole nother song and dance, right? Because just because somebody signed up doesn't mean they're going to read it, doesn't mean they're going to write a review. So I've been trying not to check Goodreads constantly, but I have been every couple days, I'm like, is there anything new? Is there anything new?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I get invited now that my channel's gotten big enough. I do get invited to do ARC reads often, and I haven't really said yes to many of them because I'm just it's not that I don't want to. I'm such a slow reader, so I know that I'm not going to get it to them in the time that they want it, and so I've been really working on my schedule recently to try to make in more reading time so that I can start to do that because I'd love to help and be a part. But yeah, I just can't. I'm just such a horrible reader.
Sure.
Yeah. I haven't used a lot of Threads. I think I have one. I should jump on there and check it out. I just started using Instagram more, and I kind of got hooked up. I met some of the people in the break-ins. I don't know if you know who, Josh Walker and Jonathan Weiss. There's a few of them. If you look on my stuff, you'll probably see some of their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of met them, and then I started using Instagram that way. I use Twitter mostly to message people, just find people. That's how I started doing a lot of my first interviews, is I just would find authors on there and message them.
Oh, sure. If you go on Threads, oh my gosh, you're gonna have to start saying no. Because you're going to get a whole lot of people just yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should check it out. I like the idea of no ads because I feel like Facebook these days is basically unusable because it's just ads everywhere.
It's so bad. Even Instagram, because I do use Instagram, but I find that I don't get nearly as many organic followers on there. But it's I'm going through my feed and every third post is a promoted post. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting about and maybe, I part of me is well, maybe it's a honeymoon period because it's such a new platform. But I do feel even YouTube, the organic traffic for YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, like it's really tough. Like
Very hard.
I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 3-4 years now, and I've done like, I mean, I do video editing for a living. So I've done everything from like hyper editing videos to not editing them at all to like and it just doesn't seem like it matters really, you know? So I maybe I'll give Threads a try. Maybe I'll do that.
Highly recommend. Yeah. I do wonder if it is like you said, a honeymoon period, but I haven't seen any major changes. And I've been on for, gosh, 9 months now? But I think it was made last summer, I think. And they really tried to push it as like the new Twitter. But I do wonder at what point it's, they might start introducing little videos or they might start, having little ads here and there. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and then it's like everything is basically turned into TikTok because you're just like YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. Like
everything
that's
all is TikTok. Can we have one? That's why I really like Threads. It's one thing that is not TikTok at all. You will not see I don't know. I was going to insert like a reference to some friend on there, but I don't really know what they are right now.
Right.
So try to avoid it.
Yeah, definitely. So, you're back to your books. So you're partway through the second book already. Did you kind of start that alongside the first one, or did you like finish the first one and then jump into two?
As soon as I was obviously done with the first draft of the first one, and then I want to say this summer. So when it was pretty much done with beta readers and I was almost at the arc reader point, I was like, let's start writing, because I knew that if I took too long of a break, that break would just get longer and longer and longer. And I know that like you don't want too long of a break between books. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I know that there's a lot of authors who have really long gaps, but especially because I have other things that I want to work on, and it's most smart marketing wise if you do have them semi close together. I do say that like coming summer 2025, the sequel will be there. Might it turn into fall 2025? Maybe. But I can do that because it's all in my hands. So, next year. Next year is going to be book 2, and if I have that as my deadline, I can make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So here's a piece of advice that I hear from you see this on a lot of writing videos and advice, where like write your manuscript, you do your first draft, you do your revised draft, whatever, and then set it aside for a couple of months and then come back to it. Is that something that you do? Is that something you think is valid? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I give it a month. Yes, I did it with this one. I finished it was really nice timing because I finished end of November and I was like, holidays, my birthday, dealing with it. And then come New Year, that will be the time to revisit it.
Of course.
And I do think that, I don't know if all creatives feel this way, but I think most, where when you're finished with it right away, you hate it and you think it's trash. At least I do.
Yeah.
So, and that was a big thing with the first manuscript I wrote. I finished it and immediately started querying. I never know. And in my head, I was like, this is trash. This is a terrible draft. The entire story is terrible. Like, this is not going to sell. And then I had the idea for Neon Noir, but it was kind of like a whole big mess in my head. I think that if I stepped away for a month and then looked at it again, I would not have felt a lot of those feelings, because when I revisit that manuscript now, I'm like, it's actually pretty good. This is not that bad. Like, with a little polishing, I could actually make this work. So I very much agree, even just to give yourself a break, because it is a big process to write a draft, but there's still so much work that needs to be done. Like, give yourself a break. Deserve it. Take a month.
Yeah, I always feel like if I gave it like 6 months, I would lose all momentum, and then I would
too long.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't want to lose the momentum.
Right. But giving it a little bit of a break, I think, is good. I think it's trash as I'm writing it and immediately following. So, like, I finish a writing session and I'm like, all of this is garbage. It's all terrible. And then
Yeah.
I'll read it like the next day, but I'll read a little bit before I write another chunk.
Hmm.
And I'll go, oh, this is not horrible.
Right.
Um, I, I'm as slow a writer as I am a reader. And, but I've been writing now for quite a few years, and my brother likes to write. He writes with me. He likes to write. We talk about it a lot. And I sent him something maybe a couple of months ago, just like a little scene. And he said, I think you're finally getting at this. And I was like, thank you. I really appreciate the honesty.
My goodness.
Yeah. But that's brothers for you, of course.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
My gosh. I like my brother so I didn't even really tell my family much that I was writing. And so then when I was like, oh, by the way, I have this book coming out. My mom was like, what? But my brother was over and he didn't know at all until I had the proof and I like showed him. And then he just kind of looks through it. I don't remember what he said. It was some offhand comment about something very unrelated and specific to like the font or something. And then that was it. And I was like,
yeah,
thank you, brother.
Right. So I have four brothers. There's five of us, and I plan to use them as part of my beta readers. And I've heard a lot of people will say, like, don't use family because they'll be too nice. I'm like, nope. My brothers will be super ruthless and probably excessively mean about it. For
Yeah.
sure. So this is my manuscript I've actually completed. That is total trash, and no one will ever read this. Like, it's going to go through heavy revisions. But I remember handing my same brother that, and he just goes, well, this is not good. He just was like, really, he goes, there's some good things in here, but this is not good. And I was like, okay, we're just going to rip that Band-Aid right off.
Yeah, geez. No compliment sandwich for you.
Yeah. So it's more like an open face sandwich. Like we're going to be mean at first, and then we'll be like, well, there's a couple of things, Yeah.
Jeez.
Families.
It's tough.
Yeah. So we're getting close to an hour here. So why don't you, if you could give, I always like to end with this. If you had maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice for either new writers or people that have, they've written a book and they're jumping into self-publishing, what would be the advice that you'd give them?
I think one of the big things is not to compare yourself to other writers, creatives, whatever, and to get your information from a lot of different places. So it is so easy, especially if you're self-publishing, when you're trying to build a social media presence, when you're trying to get through writing and editing, to just see what other people are. I felt this way just about people posting how many words they've written, and they're like, another 3,000 words today. And I'm like, I know that is a lot of words. And I'm not keeping track, but I know that I do not get close to 3,000 words in a day. So even little things like that, but then just to see other people post and, oh, I got 300 ARC signups, or I've gotten 1,000 pre-orders, those are really intense numbers. Or even just to see follower counts and see someone who's writing in the same genre as you and they have thousands and thousands of followers, and to constantly be like, well, why don't I have that? I would say, for every one person you see that's more successful than you, there's 10 at your level or below you. So don't only compare yourself to the ones up here, but also just use them all as learning experiences. Like, there's one author who we were kind of had the same timeline of, she was releasing in summertime and she was kind of going through the same process as I was. And I wasn't copying her, but I was looking at her for inspiration and stuff because she had all these followers and we both followed each other. And I was and I even messaged her and I was like, I love how coordinated your page is. And you have all these different little graphics and things for your characters and for all this other stuff. Like, can I ask what's your process? And she gave me a bunch of tips, and she told me, and she used Canva as I would soon discover, like, everybody uses Canva, but I never used Canva before. So, and she gave me some tips with that and like picking a color palette and sticking with it. And so then I started to do that. And then people, they'd come to my page and they'd see all this neon pink and blue and little book blurbs and stuff. And, oh, that looks cool. And that was a tangent there. But and she has been really successful with her debut. But I've seen the work that she puts into it. And just to use them as, how can I learn from them? But also their success and what they do is completely different than you. And not to place your success in numbers. Like for me, it will never be how many books I've sold. I have pre-orders available right now, and I'm just amazed that people are pre-ordering. But I've gotten to the point where when I have pre-orders, it's not like in my head previously, I might have thought, once I reach 10, that's just so amazing. You don't really get that. For me, there's always that feeling of like more and more and more. So in a way, it's almost like you're never satisfied. And just kind of check yourself in what is really important. And for me, what's most important is somebody reading my book and wanting to read the next one. And when I got a review that said that they loved it and they were so excited for the next one, that was more amazing than any amount of pre-orders, than any amount of followers. Like, that was just golden to me. So that was all hullabaloo here and there, but quality over quantity, and don't compare yourself to other creators. Like, just keep your eyes on yourself and your own work. Do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I would kind of just add to that, kind of what you're saying about the other author you were talking to, is like pretty much everyone that I've run into, I think actually everyone, I don't think I've yet met someone who wasn't just like super supportive and super like everyone just is really into helping everyone else. Like I haven't met anyone who was like, I would never help with that, or be, like everyone's just super nice and supportive.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. So I would say definitely for people yeah, don't compare yourself to them, but like, don't be afraid to ask, like, be respectful, of course, but don't be afraid to ask like for help or thoughts or like tips,
right.
or, so.
Yeah, don't view them as this distant, better than you king or queen over there that's unapproachable. Like, just because they have more followers, like, they're somebody to learn from.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's been really great talking to you. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited to read the book. I will definitely put it on the list, which has grown quite large recently, but I'll put it on the list for sure.
No rush.
But yeah, it's been great talking to you. And where can we find you on all the places?
Yes. So on Instagram, I'm Nina Author, and that's the same on Threads. But I do have a link tree, and it's just Nina Voss. So is that linkt.ree, Nina Voss. So yeah, those are my
awesome. Well, we'll put all that stuff in the description, and people can check it out. And I believe, like I said, probably by the time people are watching this, your book will be out, and that'll be super exciting.
Go get it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching. This has been Writing Quest and Nina Voss. She has a book that will be out on September 30th called Neon Noir. And great having you on the show. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.